Hello everyone, welcome back. We're going to review the next episode of The Penguin. So this will be episode 3 we'll be talking about. And I really think this one, it was closer to being described as a filler, but there really was a lot of story and background, mostly, that it gave us for some of our characters. And so, although at the end of the day it was sort of filler, it actually explained a lot at the same time, which is a rare blend for a series like this to sort of have a filler but yet still be worth existing as an episode, if you will. It's rare that both scenarios are a part of the same episode, but that's the case with this one. It was filler, but it actually gave some really neat backstory, mostly for Victor. And so I think he was the character that needed a backstory the most, and this episode delivers. What's interesting is you take a franchise like Marvel, ever since Avengers Endgame, most Marvel projects will at least once reference the snap, when Thanos snapped his fingers. And so I think for the Batman universe, for the Penguin, the flood that the Riddler caused is that new event where all these characters have their motivations for furthering their business or for wanting to get revenge, or their trauma came from or the Riddler's axe. So I think the flood is definitely going to be the centerpiece in the backstory for many central characters, at least for the next movie villains. That's what I'm going to predict, is the next movie's villain will be affected by the flood. And so I'm really excited to see where this franchise goes as a whole. But for this episode, we get a little bit of a glimpse into Victor's past. And although this episode, or the series in general, doesn't take place long after that, we get a flashback to the day, or the night when it happened. Is Victor wanted to hang out with some of his friends. We get the scene with him and his parents and his sister. And he's basically saying, hey, I'm gonna go out with these friends, and his dad doesn't trust the crowd he's hanging out with. So they sort of have their argument a little bit, and that's kind of the last thing he says to him. Because as he goes off to hang out with his buddies, they're on this rooftop, and they hear the explosions from Riddler's axe. And so as the city's flooding, he can actually see his home being hit with a flood. And they don't show in detail that his family died, but it's presumed they died. Now, sure, maybe his sister could survive when his parents didn't. Maybe she went out for a grocery run, or whatever. But I think the fact that his parents died from this act, it not only is an interesting backstory because he had witnessed it, and it was something that wasn't part of his control, but he also very easily could have been a part of that as well. If he wasn't allowed to go hang out with his friends, or if he didn't choose to do it anyway, he would have been there. And so, although sometimes backstory isn't absolutely necessary, I feel like for this character, since he's really the only bright spot in the series, he's the only guy that he's truly worth rooting for, I think having this backstory ultimately was necessary, because it gave us something to sympathize with, something to connect between audience and Victor Aguilar. So I think it was a good story to incorporate into this episode, because we have yet another reason to root for this kid. And so ultimately I think it helped the story. Now, moving on from him, from this backstory point of view, Penguin is setting up this meeting with Sophia. They're going to try and take over the drug trade, and Victor is supposed to be the driver, but Sophia says no. So Victor is sort of left behind for a portion of the episode while Penguin and Sophia go off to do what they're doing. And Victor ends up finding his girlfriend that he hadn't seen since that night. And she shows up, and he sort of gives her a little bit of an explanation as to what he's been doing since then. She suggests that he gets on the bus out of town with her. And so now for the remainder of this episode, as he realizes Penguin's on his way back, so his girlfriend has to leave, he now has a choice to make. Does he run away with her or stay and work for the Penguin? Because he's also scared of the Penguin. He doesn't know how he's going to react, what he'll do. He assumes the Penguin will have him killed. And so this sort of fear of this mobster character that the Penguin is, it finally creates some suspense around his character, because so many characters in this series say Penguin as this sort of idiot, I guess. Most of the crime families in Gotham don't take him seriously, but Victor is. So I'd like to think that Penguin keeps Victor around as sort of, I think it feeds his ego a little bit, and he, on some level, is trying to help him out, even though he's going about it in an illegal way. So, irregardless, they're going to try to push out this new drug at this club. So, Sophia, Penguin, and Victor are going there. And as Victor is handing out these drugs, at the end of this test run, however long it was supposed to have been, Penguin congratulates Victor. He said, "Great job. You did great, kid." And as Victor gets a text, Penguin demands to see the phone and sees that he was being asked to leave, and tells Victor, "Go ahead and go." So as Victor leaves, he drives off in Penguin's car. He gets to the bus station but sees her leave without him, because he chooses not to get out of the car. He chooses not to go with her ultimately, because I think on some level for him, Penguin is helping him become stronger, more independent, and he sort of has this sort of part of his backstory is his dad could have been better off, but he chose not to because he was a humble human being and he was a decent person. So Victor is kind of, it's not revenge, but he's willing to take what he's being encouraged to believe he deserves, and that's the role Penguin plays with him. And so as he goes back to this club, to go back to see Penguin, the Maronis are there, and he sees the Penguin and Sophia sort of about to be shot. So he drives into the gunner, ends up basically killing him, even though his body was sort of flailing after he backed up. But anyway, Oz gets in the car and they drive off, saying, "Leave Sophia, forget her." That is how our episode concludes. And so there is no going back for Victor. And of course, we already knew this with Oz, but there's no going back for Victor. So these characters are most definitely a pair now. They're going to be working with each other, and I hope that in the next Batman movie, we get to see Victor Aguilar make it to the big screen. Hopefully he'll play some sort of a role in the movie, because I think it'd be really great. And although most people care about Batman more than villains, especially someone like Penguin, I think the show is just sort of this nice little cherry on top to the franchise. Overall, if Penguin survives the show, he's in the next movie, but he gets one or two scenes, and it really doesn't amount to all that much. That would sort of discredit the show being necessary, but at the same time, for someone who appreciates Batman and Gotham and the world-building aspect of this franchise, this show is doing that very well. So although Penguin might not become the most important character in this franchise, I think with the Falcones and the Maronis and the state of Gotham, I think the show is definitely going to propel this universe into what is next. I think some of the effects in the show will definitely have a mention or nod in the next movie. So I've heard some people argue, do we really need a Penguin TV show? Maybe we don't necessarily need to see Penguin, especially a anti-hero kind of thing, but the show isn't exactly that. The show just builds up the other aspects of Gotham. Yes, Penguin is lead, but that is not the only story in this show, and that is why it keeps my interest high. I've always had an interest in sort of the taking over the city style TV shows. That's why I loved the series Arrow. He was a vigilante. He didn't show his face like Penguin does, but in the similar DC fashion, it was a power struggle between different, crime families trying to take over the city. And so this show isn't similar in the aspect of having a vigilante or a hero, But the villains of the series Arrow, the general story for those villains, is not too dissimilar to the general story of the villains in this TV series now. So I'm excited. I thought this episode was pretty good. It was filler ultimately, but I think it did give us something neat to use to build upon for the next episode. So thank you guys for sticking with me. Thanks for watching this review. I look forward to seeing the next one, reviewing the next one. I'll see you guys next time. Again, thanks for watching.